this where they slept? Wow. Wait, so these are the quarters?
Possibly.
Wow. This must have been terrible.
Oh, we're out here.
What?
God, I'm meant to be out there.
Huh?
I'm meant to be out there.
Yeah, stop. We're not all through here. Let's move on to the thing. We'll come back.
We go.
Penitentiary. The first floor that we saw when we just walked through, those are your solitary confinement cells. There's 136 of those, so those are the more highly units. They're the ones wearing the leg irons. Your next floor up, oh no, the first two floors, sorry, your next floor up is the is where you had your mess hall. That's where you ate. It also doubled as a classroom, so this training and educating that's happening for the convicts, it's voluntary though. And only about 10% of the population. And so he writes in his journal, he is a broken man. He can't do this anymore. And so he appeals to his overseer of the time. Please move me off of this gang. And what do you think happened?
Probably got laughed at.
Well, you would think he would, but actually this time they had sympathy for him and they did move him off of the gang. But you're at the whim of your overseer here, so that same request could have been made by someone else and yeah, you'd be laughed at or flogged or given a harsher punishment, more time in your sentence to even dare us to come off of that gang. The most ultimate form of punishment, at least in those early years, were the floggings that happened here. So the men would be tied to a triangle with their bare back and they would be hit with a cat of nine tails. Anywhere from 50 upwards lashes. Who do you think they get to do this punishment? Soldiers? Officers? It's actually other convicts. Yeah. So that's not a job you volunteer for. No. But if you refuse, of course, well then you'll be the first one to be flogged. So 10 to 100 lashes. You're not always going to be able to withstand that in one go, so there is a medical officer there. And he will call time on the whole thing if he thinks that you can't take anymore. And he sounds really nice, doesn't he? Yeah, he's got your best interests at heart.
No.
Well, no, you are the workforce. So they don't want you to die. If it does get too much, though, he will call time on it, and they might send you up to that building behind us here. And that was the hospital. That's the third hospital that was here at Port Arthur. And they might put something into your wounds, maybe even just throw salt water into them to clean them out. Sounds nice, doesn't it? So you think just once you would be flogged, and then you want to do the right thing. You'll work your way up and get out of here. That wasn't always the case. Some men are being flogged over and over and over. Some men are even singing songs. And so it's having the opposite of effect. They're becoming heroes in their surgery. And so later down the line, the authorities actually steer away from this physical form of punishment and they go to a more psychological form of punishment to try and break these men. That hospital, it treated the soldiers that were here, treated the convicts, of course, it even treated the people it didn't treat were the free people that were here. Officers along with their wives and children helped run the prison. They were lucky enough to be treated in their own homes. And so if we take that short walk over here, I'll tell you a bit more about them. Right, so everybody can see the church there, the top of the church? Yep. So from the church down along here, that's what's referred to as Civil Road. So that's where all those officers are that help running the prison. In the very beginning though, that's not where the officers were. They were actually along Champ Street behind the penitentiary. But of course, when that church, very nice timing, thank you church, when that church is built, well, this is a nice side of town, isn't it? So we'll have our permanent houses over here. The church is a very special building, not just because of its beauty. It was never named or consecrated. So that meant that all faiths could worship there. The convicts are marching under armed guard though, kept under armed guard during the service because we're all together, convicts, civilians and military, so the ambience of the church can be somewhat lost. When you're in there as well, it's empty. Fire obviously spread through Port Arthur and there's no roof on it. If you can believe it, over 1,000 people would fit into that church at a time. And during its peak in the 1840s, they said there was a couple of thousand people living here. They'd have to hold 3 services, 1,000 people each time. Down along from here, so we have through there, the orange building, can you see that? Yes, so that is the parsonage on your map, and it's one of Australia's most haunted buildings. So definitely go in there today.
Let's do that.
And then that brings us to this house here. Greenhouse with the green shutters. That's the junior medical officer's house. It didn't start out as that though, it was the commiserate's officer's house. And he was, like everyone else over here, in a weatherboard cottage. And then he says, well, if you do not build me my own house, I'm going to leave. And so they finally agree on a plan. He gets his brand new house. 8 months later, they post him somewhere else. So I don't know whether that was on purpose or just one of those horrible coincidences. Then it becomes the medical officer's house. I try and do my own reading here because there's a lot of upsetting things that you read about, and I try to balance it out sometimes to find some good characters that were here. There were good characters as well. I think Dr. Brunel that was there was. He came for different stints at Port Arthur, back and forth. And at the time, he had his children with him. In the very beginning, he said that the reason he wants to leave is that his children, you can grasp things that are here. They react. But down the line, they're used to everything that's going on here. Floggings, they're not reacting. And so, see, that's no place to raise a family, and then they eventually do leave. But every time he comes back, the reason when he's not here, he's, well, who's doing that good work if I'm not there? It could be someone worse than, he doesn't really believe this is the greater good work. So that sort of happens. But it's his children in the end that make them leave eventually. Now, I mentioned over at there that the early days it was a physical form of punishment. In those later days, they've decided to steer away from that, and they're going to go to the more psychological form of punishment. And that's when they built this building behind us here. That grey circular building. And on your map, it's known as a separate prison. It's also known as the silent prison, because when you were in there was no talking whatsoever. They even strip you of your name, your identity. You're just known as a number. The guards are often talking in sign language, slippers, mats on their feet, so you don't know where anyone is in there, and so you're not tempted to talk to the man in the cell next to you. It's built on the Pentonville model, so that's maximum surveillance, minimal interaction. And you're in that cell for 23 hours a day. And you're only let out for 1 hour's exercise. But it's a high-walled exercise yard, and it's singular. And every time you do leave your cell to attend chapel or to go to the exercise area, well, they put a hood over your head, and it just has 2 eye slits, so nobody knows who anyone is. It's very disorientating. We're not meant as humans to have no contact with anyone. If you can believe it, life can get worse. There is a further punishment cell in that prison. And not only is it silent in that cell, but there's no light in it either. And you can be in there anywhere from 3 to 30 days, and when you are, you're just fed bread and water. They even bring you this bread and water at different intervals and times, so you can't even gauge how long you've been in that cell by normal things happening like that. And so they wanted to break these men, and some of them they do. And that's why they built this building beside us here, a lunatic asylum. Now in 1853 they actually stopped transporting prisoners to Port Arthur, but Port Arthur doesn't close until 1877. So for that window of time you've got a population here that's dwindling, becoming older, weak, feeble, mad. And so they build what we can see just through there, it's a paupers depot. And that's to house this older generation of convicts. It's actually the start of the welfare system here in Australia. In 1877, after Port Arthur closes its doors, well, it pretty much becomes a tourist destination overnight. People want to come here. And so it becomes a town. They even rename it to Carnarvon to try and steer away from that convict state. But that's bad for business. They change it back after that. So a lot of these houses, a lot of these places, they turn into hotels. Junior medical office is a hotel. The parsonage becomes a post office. Funny enough, the lunatic asylum becomes the town hall. It's fitting, isn't it? Yes. It's not until, well, 2 fires sweep through. Of course, that's why a lot of the buildings didn't survive and have been rebuilt. And then after that, they try and auction it off, get rid of it. They want to get rid of it. I've actually read a local council meeting minute, and it went up for a vote. They were going to just clear all this, but someone there made a passionate plea and said, no, it's very, very important. So imagine if that meeting had gone different. They really just wanted to erase it. But of course now we're embracing it. So it's a 100-acre site. Your tickets are good for a couple of days because it's a lot to see. In order to do that though, I'll have to give you something that the convicts wish they could have had, and that is your freedom to explore the site. Thank you for being such a great group, and enjoy the rest of your day here. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them as best I can.